Guys, you are not going to believe this story about how Jake turns the U.S. government into his sugar daddy, spending $1.5 million in just 45 days. Thank goodness for Elon Musk getting rid of all this tomfoolery in the government, creating the DOGE, the Doge. We talk about it all today. Grab your pens and your paper. We're diving in.
It's January, my man.
January 2025. Hey, dude, you know what always happens? It's so funny how, the holidays come and it's like within great anticipation, right? Everybody's excited to see family and do the holiday thing. And then Christmas comes, and then, a couple days later, New Year's and then the whole New Year's idea, especially around, entrepreneurship. We talked about this in the last pod of, setting goals and doing the thing. And then like, boom, it's January. And then like, boom, boom, it's like second week of January.
Yeah.
Like, well, wait a second. Oh, how did we get here? And then, before we know it, we're going to be halfway through January, and most people haven't really started on the things. And at least for me, it feels like, especially with all the snow, there's just the last couple, a little bit's been a little lethargic, feeling a little, no, like get with it,
Yeah. I don't feel like I've been shot out of a cannon at the beginning of this year. I feel like I'm molasses dripping out, and it's just, to your point, taking a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that, the acknowledgement of that, it's not, the situation is what it is, but the awareness of, okay, we got to get this thing rolling. I mean, obviously we've been doing stuff. It's not like we've been, schnoozing for 9 days in January, but in fact, we've been, Gathering the Kings is cranking, catching some momentum. Our app is blown up, and we got families for all across the country. But as far as like get things in the motion, we're, it's like almost not a fabrication, but like a cranking of the wheel. Like sometimes you just got to manually just get her going, But once we do, things will all be well.
This may depress you. It may not depress you. But as we sit here in the beginning of January, recording this episode, we are officially 1/24th of the way through 2025.
Yeah, no, it doesn't depress me. I think it's a sharpness of time. There was like
an understanding.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's maturity, right? To be able to look at time in a specific manner of reverence. A couple of years ago, I had somebody that I was eating lunch with, and he asked me if I knew of the app Parent Queue, and I downloaded Parent Queue, and I haven't really used it since then because of this. What I'm about to tell you that I got from it, I have used in other formats, but I put in my kids' date of births, and it immediately tells me how many days I have left with them.
Oh,
it's calculating until they turn 18, until they're grown, and then they're out. But it was immediate, like, oh my goodness, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like
talk about a sobering effect.
Yeah, and so that's how I feel about the the 1/24th. Okay, fine. Have I been a good steward of the first 24th of the year? In some ways, yeah, heck yeah. In other ways, like, dang it, it's already been 9 days. We got to roll, man. Let's go.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that are happening in our world, not just our world, Gathering the Kings, Kansas City, but the greater global scale. And what I was hoping to have a conversation with you today around, without getting red or blue political, is I would love to talk to you about the need that the new administration has for developing the Department of Government Efficiency, the Doge.
Yeah.
And how this concept of a man with relatively no political background, but as a successful entrepreneur coming in and trying to create systems in a government that doesn't really have a lot of oversight and systems. And I know that sounds weird because the red tape of doing anything with, if you've been to a DMV lately, there's a lot of hoops to jump through.
That's right.
So, but just your thoughts around this concept of efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love it. I mean, there's a factor to, to Elon specifically that is a little, I don't wanna say scary, but maybe unbridled, and, you know, what's he gonna do next? And part of that, I think, is what makes him so great because you don't know, and he takes whatever he does pretty seriously. You can look at his history and see massive, just records of success. And so from that angle, as a fellow entrepreneur, as a fellow person that just like really enjoys efficiency and like not wasting time, I'm excited for that because I think it's going to clean out a bunch of inefficiencies. Now, clean out about a bunch of inefficiencies. That means probably policies and people saving a bunch of money, sure, but that's going to have some positive and negative impacts on what we call our economy. I think all that's in the short term though, because as AI continues to progress, as money flow continues to move away from traditional sources, I'm not sure if it's a one world global system, that everybody has a universal income, but bro, I don't know how many years it's going to take for there not to be a need for a lot of human capital, you know? Even just the other day, I was talking with, somebody else about the dynamic of family and how that's changed over the last 100, 200 years, and so if you think back 100 or 200 years ago, the
Yeah.
dynamic of family was based out of survival, right? And so, like, you didn't go too far from your parents' house, and you got married, and you had kids, and you're all kinda, like, farmed the same land, and you cultivated life together because that's how you survived. And if you go back much further than that, it was, you had 12 wives and as many sons as possible so that you could have a little army so that the next little tribe over didn't come as, take your wives and things. And so, that's all survival. And so today, my world is not, determined around me needing family members or anyone else for that matter to survive, right? Like I have the ability to survive in this life and take care of my wife and kids without the quote unquote help of my brother, sister, dad, mom, farmer family around me because that's just not how the world works anymore. And so in that same fashion, now fast forward it 100 years. Does the need for human capital, human labor, farming, you know, building materials, manufacturing, does that all eventually go away? I don't know, man. Seems like it would. Seems like we'll continue to progress in that way. I don't know what that means for, 2025 specifically, but I think that there's gonna be a tug and a pull between technology, AI, and things like Elon getting in and going, "Nope, this doesn't work anymore," and cleaning up a bunch of stuff, which is gonna make a whole lot of things more affordable, but it's also going to remove a lot of opportunity for humans that currently hold those positions, right?
I admittedly am not a Twitter user or an X user, and I have no opinion of the platform at all. It's not my preferred method of social media. I know that there are a lot of people that are really crazy about it. They love it. It's where most people in the generations younger than us get their news. But when Elon took, I don't know if you know this, when Elon took over Twitter, the workforce immediately within the first 6 months went from 8,000 employees to 1,500. That's an 80% reduction in workforce.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anyone complain about it's harder to use. They're not getting the same benefit. Like it, it is seemingly that the platform continues, the benefit continues, but 80% of the human capital cost is gone. And so
Right.
now we're more efficient and effective. And like initially you're like, oh my gosh, that means that 80% of the people lost their job.
Yeah.
And that might be true, but it also gave 80% of the people to go find something else that they're passionate about
Right.
or to, propel them into their next
Yeah.
career or their
Yeah, if they
next
were
adventure.
working in a position that wasn't needed anymore, how
Yeah,
happy could you be in a
right.
position, like that? And not to, like you said, kind of pass over the loss there potentially, but, you know, this is America, there's a lot of opportunity, and especially in today's world, there's not I mean, if you want a job, then you can go find one, and there's no better place in the world to go start a new skill anyway. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in the opportunity of loss, right?
Yeah. It just is wild to me as someone who operates their life with a certain level of intentionality around things, and how my career has been predicated on developing systems where there is chaos, right?
Yeah.
Providing organization to chaos. It's crazy that we need to implement a department of efficiency, and this is such like a burr under the saddle moment for people. They're just all hot and bothered about this idea.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I mean, anytime something gets, kind of fat and happy, right? Like you've got this inefficiency or this slow moving thing that's bloated. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Organizations get like this. Government organizations, private organizations. There's been plenty of times and even in our own businesses, you and I, where we're looking at things or companies that we're helping, and it's like, the need is not matched with what the current team looks like, And that happens as you're scaling, growing, trying to take care of things. Like, I don't think it happens out of malintent. Now, government, that's a little different. It's not a private business, and that's happened over decades, right? Just, you know, unfortunately, and you know this better than I because you've worked closely with government agencies, but they have a budget, and if they don't use it, they lose it. And so everybody's literally encouraged to spend, even if it means on menial things that we don't need, because then we're going to lose that budget next quarter, next
yeah,
month, next year. And there's just no efficiency, especially in the spending, which is why we have the problems that we have. And take that by one department times however many thousands of budgets that there are,
yeah.
It's
I
insane.
mean, we could have a whole separate conversation and podcast around my experience managing funds for the United States government. It
You
was
you
a
should just talk about that
heartbreakingly
for a second because your experience is unique, and whether you want to give exact what you were doing or not, that whatever. But your experience with budgeting and government funds, I think would be illuminating to some of the listeners.
yeah. So when I decided to leave the hospitality industry, I was looking for something that was more altruistic in my life. And one of the areas that I uh, received a lot of fulfillment and joy when I was working inside of the hospitality industry was around the concept of human trafficking. And let me just make sure I'm not mincing words. I didn't get joy out of human trafficking. I got joy out of working with organizations helping to combat human trafficking in and around the United States. And hotels, no matter where they are a hotbed for that.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to sit on a couple of different boards and work with some different local and federal agencies around that concept. And so when I left hospitality, I wanted to find something in that vein and found an NGO in Phoenix that was working with unaccompanied minors that were coming to the United States borders and being put into ICE and DCS detention centers. And so these are children ages, the youngest child that we put into care was 6 months old. So 6 months old to 18. And what we did is we managed a couple of $1 million, 22 million to be precise, $1 million of government aid around helping these children get out of the ICE and DCS detention centers and into temporary foster care. Very fulfilling job. Incredible. Like drove me away from that job was just the waste and uh lack of flexibility around how the money was spent. And so as an example, Chaz, and I know I've talked about this with some of our Gathering the Kings members, but mm, I had 45 days at the end of 2022 to spend $1.5 million and it had to get spent. And I'm a fairly prolific shopper, but spending $1.5 million in 45 days was really difficult.
Yeah.
And then I'd have these like dumbass conversations with our government representative. And it was like, hey, I need to buy baby formula because we just decided to take a 6-month-old for you guys that we've never done this before, but there are certain needs that this 6-month-old has that we didn't budget for 9 months ago when we wrote our budget because we didn't think we were going to do it. So I would love to take some money from my technology budget and apply it to buying baby formula. No, you can't do that. I'm confused. Why can't I do that? Well, that's not how that money was earmarked. And so what ended up happening is I had a closet full of MacBooks that were sitting on shelves that we had purchased for future employees and children that were just collecting dust.
Yeah.
But if I didn't spend the money in that technology budget, that budget was going to be cut in half or reduced the following year. And so I've got tens of thousands of dollars to buy equipment, but I can't buy $100 worth of baby formula for a month.
Yeah.
And it's just maddening. It doesn't make sense. And the regulation and oversight is in place, but it's broken. It's really broken. There's no common sense applied to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the common sense piece is what entrepreneurs excel in, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs aren't, these high degree earning, and many are, but we think from a place of, does this make sense? Not, how can I create, create a budget for things that aren't needed yet, not be able to use it for things that are needed just because things pivoted and changed. And obviously we know that as entrepreneurs that things pivot and change all the time, which, can actually lead to a little bit of a downfall because you probably didn't have a budget, because you probably didn't think about it, because you are, using, red funds for green activities or, however you're going to categorize those things, but there's got to be, at least from like the government perspective, there's got to be someone. In this case, it's going to be, Elon and Vivek to come in and create efficiency with common sense, getting rid of things that aren't needed. And that's probably a good chunk of it, dude. I think a lot of it's just not needed. The 6,500 employees, it's not that I don't know how many of them, quote unquote, were needed at Twitter, but clearly they weren't needed. And that's just kind of a harsh reality, is that, man, we were, producing what were we producing, And so I guess that's the same approach that they're going to take, with the government agency efficiency, or the efficiency agency. And I'm looking forward to it. Hey, kings and queens, Chaz, Wolfe, I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
When I would go into a new hotel and, be tasked with turning around the operations and the culture and all of that stuff, I would make a list mentally. And if I heard you say, well, that's the way we've always done it, you got put on a certain list. And that list was, we need to find a way to offboard you as quickly as possible, because that mindset is so toxic.
Yeah.
So we've always done it this way. There's no innovation in that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this, not in the fixed mindset perspective, but just a few nights ago, we did our first Generation Next call. And so for the listeners that don't know, inside of the GTK community, we have begun providing entrepreneurial support to kids and teenagers. And so all of our members had all their kids that kind of fit, like an 8 years old and above frame. And gosh, we had, I don't know, probably 50 kids or something there on that Zoom call, and super fun. But we were talking about a growth mindset, which is obviously the opposite of the fixed mindset that you're talking about. But how can I get an 8-year-old or an 18-year-old to recognize that, doing something for the first time and being bad at it, okay, fine, sure. And I get to learn unto improving with the attitude that next time I'm going to be better. And or guess what? I made mistakes in this thing that I was supposed to do. And okay, cool. I get to learn from those. So that way when I either do this thing again in the first example or in this example, when I get to do something like it, I can't tell you, there's so many times where we go through things. We were just talking about this earlier today on some things that we've been working on marketing wise. It's like, man, that didn't really work out the way that we had hoped. But because I learned that then, I can apply that to this. Gosh, I'm so glad I learned that. And that didn't cost me money then. I got to learn how to, do that type of marketing that we were talking about. And it all works out later for the person that has the growth mindset. The fixed mindset you're talking about, that the employee or heaven forbid the entrepreneur, I mean, goodness, I can't imagine that company. Well, first off, if it's a big company, it's probably, like stagnant, if not a declining growth. If it's not yet a big company, it never will be because that's not how you get to a place of having more than a company that just, basically serves, just you, which is really just, kind of a solopreneur. You kind of own your job. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not that's not an entrepreneur. That's not a full blown business.
It's exciting times. It's it's exciting times for potential change in future, and I'm I have a lot of anticipation to see what comes of it because it's not just Twitter, right? He
Right.
has this reputation of being able to do a lot with a little. And I know that your phrase for 2025, I don't know that you've publicly said this, but I'm going to say it for you. Your phrase for 2025 is how do we do more with less? Or how do we do a lot with a little?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny as you were saying that out loud, he is kinda known for creating these big things with a whole lot less than people think that's necessary. I mean, even take a look at, SpaceX. You'll n and that wasn't even like, with less, it was, "You'll never be able to do this." Just sheer, "This is not possible." And I think people like Elon, people like entrepreneurs like us love hearing, "This can't be done," and we're like, "Oh, thank you for fueling the engine." And then, of course, he goes and does a rocket and all kinds of other stuff at, like, a 92nd, of the cost, you know, of NASA, and which is just insane. That's insane. Not only did I do it, but I did it at such a low cost that you still don't even know how I did it. I mean, how can we apply that to our businesses? I mean, that's the mantra that Jake's talking about that I had developed for this year, that I actually felt like it was a little bit kinda, heavenly download. More with less. No bloat, no extra, no, like, it's okay to be comfortable, but let's be lean, in business and in just really all the decision making. I mean, all the other areas of our lives as entrepreneurs are so impacted by how we choose to do them. What does it mean to have a lean marriage? What does it mean to have a lean, obviously a physical body? Okay, sure, but what does it mean to be a lean parent? To do more with less. You know, I don't know. I think that in general, the old phrase that I'm going to say it wrong, but good times create hard men, or it's the reverse. Hard men create good times. Yeah, and then therefore I'm starting to say it right there. But that downward spiral, or that waterfall effect there is kind of where we are. Like, we've created some amazing times, and there's kind of some soft people, and so we need to restructure and shake things up in a bit. We've kind of gotten we're bloated, we're not lean, as a country, as a government, as businesses. I don't know how you can be. We just came out of COVID money. I just sold one of my franchise locations last year, and the trajectory, it's funny how the sales, are steady but growing, and then COVID comes and it's like, boom, record year, record year, record year. I'm about to acquire a company here in Kansas City. Same thing. 2021, 22, even 23, just Shoo, incredible years. And in the negotiation, it's like, hey guys, cool, like great. I'm so glad you had your record year last year. I'm not buying that company though, right? Because guess what? Let's look at this year. And that's okay. Like we got to we and I felt like I priced the business that I sold accordingly to that, and I was pretty open with the guy. But the scenario is like I can't, I can't buy COVID money. We were bloated then, right? You had extra money. You were investing. People were buying edible arrangements because they just had the extra funds, and we do things like that when we're bloated. But when we get lean, we make different types of decisions, right?
So speak to me real quickly about and maybe you have forecasted this or haven't forecasted this, but how do you continue to have an abundance mindset and live in abundance but still be lean? And when I go back to the example of the government, you know, the United States has been the beacon of hope to the entire world. And we've been spending so much money in outreach and trying to promote democracy and promote safety and security to other parts of the world. And that's cost us a lot of money, which is created this environment that the United States is abundant, but also to your point, we got bloated.
Yeah.
And so how do you have both lean and abundance?
Yeah. I mean, the word that comes to my mind is prudence, right? And just because one is prudent, and I guess I can look up the definition real quick here, but or maybe Sandy, if you can put it in the notes for me, that'd be kind of cool. You know, the definition of prudence is so diverse. Here it is right here. Marked by wisdom or judiciousness, shrewd in the management of practical affairs, cautious, discreet, thrifty, frugal, and there gives some examples there. But thrifty, frugal. I'm not as much of a fan of those, but I think it's part of the word. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not just cautious or frugal. It's
Yeah.
the element of wisdom inside of those things. Because guess what? There are times you can have abundance, you can have an overflow, but then you can take that money or that whatever is being overflown or overflowed and not be a good steward of it. And so if it's my objective to be a good steward of all the resources, my time, my money, my family, my team members, my community, like all of my resources, if I truly want to be a good steward, then I look at those things with responsibility. And just because I have an abundance mindset, meaning I can always go get more. Right now, I can't always go get more time. Okay, this situation has passed, or this too shall pass, or I'll get another chance tomorrow. Some of those things are applicable with time, but for sure with resources, right? Specifically around money. Okay, so I can have an abundant mindset that I can always go make more money tomorrow, or that I had a loved one pass, but I can build another relationship tomorrow. I can't get those specific things back, but my abundant mind is always I'm not gonna stop in the lack, and my life is over because I'm out of this resource. I don't actually think I'm out of this resource. I'm going to pivot and get that resource through another channel of sorts, right? This business folds, no problem. I start another one. I lose my job, no problem. I get another one. I develop a new skill. I lose this family member. Okay, no, not this, no problem. But you get what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be dry and dark about it. But the abundant mindset is my belief that that there is more somewhere else, and that I'm not drawn into this scarcity of, oh no, this is all I've got. I have to conserve. Right now, taking that hat off and putting on the prudent hat is I don't necessarily want to conserve for the sake of, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out. I want to be a good steward. And so, okay, I have 100 of these things, whatever it is, dollars or millions or whatever. How do I use these for the best return on investment, the best experience, the best team, whatever it is I'm looking for? And so I think that prudence helps me make decisions around using what I have for the best use of that. And sometimes that could be buying something that doesn't make sense, right? So that's where frugal kind of gets kicked out of the way. And we go on a family vacation, or I buy a material thing that maybe doesn't make sense. Probably the watch that I own doesn't make sense. But from like a frugal perspective, because I could use that money in real estate, or I could go do other investments with it. And that is how my mind thinks sometimes. But at some point, the experience, or how I feel, or what I get to, partake in because of the things that I'm a part of, or the watch club or whatever, the car club or whatever, those things get to then bring me further return on investment. And so it's strategic at that point. Strategic and prudent, I kind of put in kind of the same bucket. And I think that that's how we should be looking at it. That's why I don't think the government looks at spending, which is what I am excited about, the Doge deal. But for us, you, me, the listener right now, thinking about our businesses and our families, how can I look at our resources and be a good steward? Sometimes I have to say no to something, even if I have the money. I'll use the example of the watch that I just described. I could have bought the watch well before I bought the watch, but I specifically waited. I delayed the gratification because I wanted it to mean something, because that was part of the experience. Two, I had other things that I had earmarked or that said were more important than that. And I think that's what prudence is. Even though it was sitting there in the account and I could have done it, I waited because that was serving a different purpose. And so chess, right? That's what we're doing as entrepreneurs, playing chess.
Yeah. Got to have a vision for the big picture.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get so short sighted with that immediate gratification.
Right.
We we both had the opportunity to as young men learn the value of delayed gratification. And I think that it's hard for people to come out of that delayed gratification mindset to live in abundance sometimes, because they get so caught up in this. I'm delaying, I'm delaying, I'm delaying.
Yep. Yeah. But I'll tell you, I'd rather be stuck there than I would in, not being prudent, being bloated, making poor choices, and then having to revert back. I think that would be a harder transition. And the listener might be experiencing that. They might be, maybe they had a great couple of years with COVID and weren't prudent with the money. They didn't save it. They didn't think about the future. I mean, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But what's going to be needed most likely in that scenario is just, some awareness or consciousness around what the flow is, whether it's money or whatever resource we're talking about, and then recalculating decisions, going, okay, I know we've done that in the past, but maybe that doesn't serve us anymore. Or maybe that doesn't serve us in this season that we're in, because we've decided that this other thing is more important. It doesn't mean that the family vacation or the whatever else that we've gotten accustomed to is going to go away forever, but maybe it needs to go away for a period of time, because we've determined that this is actually the end result that we're looking for this year. And that over expense thing, it doesn't fit in, the family vacation piece is so interesting. We obviously run a family vacation, mastermind trip, and it's not cheap, but it's an incredible opportunity for families to get away, and there's major value in that. But at the end of the day, if you're listening right now and you can't go do that, that's not prudent for you, then guess what? Like, you can go camping for hardly any money at all.
Yeah.
And if camping's not your thing, then figure out something else. But it doesn't even have to be about the money, right? And even for us, as yes, we're going on a Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, and all kinds of families from all across the country. But like, it's the experience of it. It's who's gonna be there. It's not really like this, I'm just lavish thing that I'm just gonna go. I've chosen this way to vacation specifically because, in addition to the family vacation, I'm gonna get to network with some incredible family or business owners, and my kids are gonna be around other entrepreneur families. It was still made out of a prudent decision making process, you know?
No, yeah. It's so interesting. Like that whole concept of prudence and delayed gratification and being lean and your vision for the future. It's things that really move the needle in people's lives. Like this is a skill set that is really important to teach the young. And we're just not talking about it,
Yeah.
right? This society that we've developed is consumerism, and it's go buy now and replace soon.
Yeah.
And, you know, the newest version is coming out. And so are you buying it? And we've allowed things to become status symbols. And, it's not cool to save money. It's not cool to live below your means. It's not cool to be prudent
Right.
with the things that you are talking about here today, Chaz.
Yeah. It's so interesting because you're right, it's not cool to the masses, but, for the entrepreneurs, my kids think it's cool. Not necessarily to be, like I said, the frugal. There's a time and a place for that, but to be purposeful, to be
Yeah.
intentional, to be well thought out, which is how I think of prudent. And for the kids, the spending versus investing conversation, we do a workshop for spending versus investing on our family vacation for the kiddos. But every time I've done it, whether it's our own workshops, right, and I've done that, several times within schools, it's pretty easy to, you can draw a clock up there and you say you take your time and you go to work and you get, and they say money. Okay, great. And then you take your money and you buy things, right? That's almost instantaneous. And just to your point, it's consumerism. And if I can get them to understand at, 8 or 18 that when we earn the money, that the objective isn't necessarily to buy things. Of course, we have to buy things in order to survive, but the objective is not to buy things, actually. The objective is to buy my time. The objective is freedom. And what that looks like is now I have the money. I make a decision on where best this money can go so that I no longer have to take my time and go back to work in order to refill the bucket. Because in the example that I use with the kids is that, okay, great. So you went to work and we always have, pick out fun careers and it kind of fits in with career day and stuff like that in the schools. But, you went to school and you were a doctor or sorry, not school, but you went to work and you were a doctor or a veterinarian or, a teacher or whatever. And they earn money. And so I was, give them something that represents money. And then I come around and I have to collect rent and the things of, food and all the basics. And it leaves them with something, you know. And then I always have it typically if I make it candy, then they're super excited about it. And I have everybody in the room eat that piece of candy because that's what's left over and they're super excited about it. With the exception of the one kid in the room who drew the investor business owner tag, you know? And so he invests his in his business or in real estate. And so the whole classroom, I make him feel really bad. Everybody gets to eat their chocolate, and then this one kid, is like, "Oh man," and he's, "Wait, what? Everybody gets to eat theirs, but I don't," and just hilarious with the kids, and literally, shoving their faces full of chocolate or whatever it is that I've given them, and then I'm like, "Okay, great. So now it's the next month. What do you got to go do?" You know, well, you got to go back to work to earn more money. Okay, so you went back to work to earn the more money. I was like, but actually, before you go back to work, that investment that the investor entrepreneur made that came through. It's called a return on investment, and they sold the property or the business took off. Whatever the example I'm given, and before you guys go back to work, let me give him his return on investment or hers, and I come over with this huge bucket and just dump all this candy and it just goes all over the desk and all the kids are like, wait, what? I want some. And, some kids are like snatching some. And it's like, no, 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 whoa, no, 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 you ate yours. And this one kid gets this huge pile of candy and they're like, oh, that's not fair. And da, 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 da. And it's like, well, actually a minute ago, you didn't want to share your candy with him, right? All you guys got candy, but he didn't, or she didn't. Now he's got his return on investment or she's got his return on investment. And guess what you have to do? Right? We just determined you have to go back to work. Okay. So go on back to work. You got to go to work. You got to put in your time because you got to eat, right? You got to pay rent again. I was like, but again, before we do that, does the entrepreneur investor have to go to work? Does he have enough to pay rent out of the? Yeah, he does. So you get to choose now, investor, entrepreneur, whether you want to go to work tomorrow. Everybody else has to. And if I can get kids 8 or 18, like I say, to understand, I get money in and I don't just buy the necessities and then eat the rest, buy sneakers or candy or whatever else, you know. For me, when I was that age, it was sneakers, I just too many pair of shoes. where would I be if I hadn't have spent all that money, right? So if you get them to understand, don't do that yet, invest it first. So it's not spend first, it's invest first. Spend what you have to left over in order to survive. Sure, okay, fine, but invest first. And then eventually what happens is that return on investment overtakes you needing to go to work. And I can get kids to understand that. It's incredible, actually, when they do. They're like, wait a second. And it's like, light bulb, ding. They've just never been taught it before. Pretty crazy, right?
It's very crazy. And having been in those rooms with you, watching that light bulb moment to happen, it is truly one of the most joyful experiences that I can think of.
Yeah.
Because the recognition of, oh my gosh, there's a different way.
There's a different
And
way.
it doesn't have to be as difficult as I thought it was.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, especially as entrepreneurs that have kids, we can give them, we don't have to give them anything other than the understanding, you know. Ideally, if I can give my kids wisdom and wealth, okay, cool. But even if I can't, even if I don't have wealth, I can give them pieces like this little example I just gave to you that can change the trajectory. Because at 8 or 18, I mean, we just did this first call the other night, and I've already followed up with a few families, and one of the kids has already sold like $100 worth of cookies. He went that night, he made cookies, and the next day started calling family members to sell them, and has already made $100. It's like, now if I can get that kid to understand, don't spend the $100 on garbage things, but go buy more cookie batter, go eventually buy a piece of real estate. Man, can you imagine what a 25-year-old is doing that learned that at 12?
yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's exciting. We met a guy a couple of months ago, and his daughter, who's 11 years old, has a $100,000 t-shirt or a tennis shoe reselling business on eBay.
Yep.
And you hear stories like that, and you're like, "Gosh, this is so cool! This is incredible."
Yeah. Yeah. As an adult, you go, wait a second, she made how much?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Well, for the listener, we just appreciate you being here with us this new year. We appreciate you starting out your year with us. And if conversations like this are interesting to you, if you don't have people in your life that are talking about efficiencies inside of businesses or talking about creating leanness in their own lives or an abundant mentality, Chaz, how can they get more information? How
Yeah.
can they find people?
Yeah, go to gatheringthekings.com. Obviously, we've talked about the community here quite a bit, but this may be your first time hearing it. And so we have a community of entrepreneurs from all across the country. We've all got different types of businesses. What links us together is that we are down to earth, we're growth minded, family oriented. We want more out of life. We're grateful, but not done. And to be around people like that on a regular basis, in person and online, is absolutely fueling me to live the exceptional life. And I know that many of our members, if they were sitting right here, would be like, dude, I'm living the exceptional life because I'm surrounded by people who are constantly not only doing it themselves, but pushing me to do the same. So you can go to gatheringthekings.com and fill out an application there if you think you and your family, and your kids included, being around other high performing entrepreneur families would be a benefit to you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.